Emma Gonzalez became a celebrity this year. She was one of the survivors of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas shooting in February of 2018. 3 days after the shooting, she gave an emotional speech at a gun control rally. A little over a month later, she delivered yet another emotional speech in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives. This video will use Kenneth Burke's theory of identification in order to understand Emma Gonzalez's speeches. Human beings are social creatures. We want to belong. We don't want to be alone. Kenneth Burke argues that we are motivated by desire and that our most fundamental human desire is social. Identification is our response to this desire. We do it all the time. We are always unconsciously observing and identifying ourselves with others. When you walk into a room, you do a quick scan to see if anyone seems similar to you. Hey, that girl has my shoes. Emma's motivations show up in the middle of her first speech.
I watched an interview this morning and noticed that one of the questions was, do you think your children will have to go through other school shooter drills? And our response is that our neighbors will not have to go through other school shooter drills. We are going to be the kids that you read about in textbooks. Not because we are going to be another statistic about mass shootings in America, but because, just as David said, we are going to be the last mass shooting.
For Burke, identification goes beyond two people wearing the same shoes. Identification is a social act that partially unifies discrete individuals, a mode of symbolic action that resides squarely within the representational arena. Rhetoric is traditionally thought of as persuasion. Aristotle, Plato, the other dead guys, and ethos, pathos, and logos. But Burke suggests that you only persuade a man insofar as you can talk his language by speech, gesture, tonality, order, image, attitude, and idea, identifying your ways with his. Emma uses old persuasion and this new persuasion in her speeches.
$30 million! And divided by the number of gunshot victims in the United States in the 1.5 months in 2018 alone, that comes out to being $5,800. Is that how much these people are worth to you, Trump?
One of the ways we identify with others is consubstantiality, meaning of the same substance. We are made up of many complex identities. Consubstantiation occurs when we recognize that we have common sensations, attitudes, and ideas as others. As quoted in the Murray article, Burke gives us the following example of consubstantiality in his Grammar of Motives. Subject A is not identical with subject B, but insofar as their interests are joined, subject A is identified with subject B. In being identified with subject B, subject A is substantially one with a person other than himself, yet at the same time he remains unique.
Instead of worrying about our AP Gov Chapter 16 test, we have to be studying our notes to make sure that our arguments based on politics and political history are watertight.
Joaquin Oliver would never play basketball with Sam or Dylan. Elena Petty would never, Carol Lugren would never, Chris Hickson would never, Luke Hoyer would never, Marquine Duque Aguiano would never, Peter Wang would never, Alyssa Al-Hadaf would never, Jamie Guttenberg would never, Meadow Pollock would never. Since the time that I came out here, it has been 6 minutes and 20 seconds. The shooter has ceased shooting and will soon abandon his rifle, blend in with the students as they escape, and walk free for an hour before arrest. Fight for your lives before it's someone else's job.
Both of these aspects of her speech directly resonate with other students. She directly calls out other high school seniors, grabbing their attention, encouraging them to join the fight. This comes back again in the end of her first speech, with her urging people to register to vote. We've established that we are all born distinctly different. No two of us are the same. This means that there are divisions among us. Going back to our desire to be social, we seek out identifications to feel part of a collective. Paradoxically, as we identify with others to overcome these natural divisions, we are also creating more divisions. Burke says identification is affirmed with earnestness precisely because there is division. Identification is compensatory to division. If men were not apart from one another, there would be no need for the rhetorician to proclaim their unity. From the get-go, Emma points out a we versus they.
Instead, we are up here, standing together, because if all our government and president can do is send thoughts and prayers, then it's time for victims to be the change that we need to see.
She later calls out Donald Trump, another senator, and the NRA. She also puts a divide between us, the students, and they, the people who think we're kids. But as a whole, rhetoric as identification means to induce cooperation and it's a sense of community. Throughout both speeches, Emma identifies with different communities, other victims of gun violence, the Parkland community, and students everywhere. By making connections to these different groups, she's drawing a sense of community and empathy out of them. Emma uses repetition in the same way that we have seen from Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy. At the end of her first speech, she gives a series of statements, each followed by, "We call BS." And as she got to the end, she had the crowd saying it with her. Her usage of language in this moment makes the crowd feel consubstantial with her.
They say a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun. We call BS. They say guns are just tools like knives and are as dangerous as cars. We call BS. No.
To summarize, Burke's theory of identification helps us to understand human behavior. It involves two key parts: consubstantiation, which is to be of the same substance, and division, which refers to the idea that when we identify with something, we exclude something else. In this case, his theory helps us to examine Emma Gonzalez's speeches following the Marjory Stoneman Douglas shooting.